So, I'm 29, living a pretty stable life, working hard in a job that has me out of town half the month. Despite my hectic schedule, I've been living with my parents and helping them out financially, paying $1,800 a month for rent and groceries, which is a hefty chunk of my income. Now, I don't mind helping my folks. That's what family does, right? But the way they've handled recent events has really shown their true colors. Let's start with how things usually go down in our family. My parents have always had this way of favoring my brother. Maybe it's because he's the only son, or he's got kids, but it's been pretty obvious. Over the years, there have been countless instances where I felt sidelined, but I shrugged it off because family. A while back, when I first landed my job and started making decent money, my parents hinted that they needed help with their mortgage. I stepped up without a second thought, agreeing to pay rent. It wasn't a formal thing, more like a verbal agreement where I thought I was doing my part. Little did I know, this set the precedent for them expecting me to financially support them indefinitely. Fast forward to a few years later, my brother, who's always been a bit reckless with his finances, got married and had kids. Despite his own needs, he rarely contributed to our parents' household, even less so after his kids were born. He had a good job, but his money was his, you know? Here's where it gets juicy. My brother loses his job. Tough break, right? Naturally, he turns to my parents for help, and without batting an eye, they decide he should move back into the family home. Only problem? The space he needs for his family is currently my space, the basement suite. I remember coming home one evening, and my parents sat me down for a talk. Here's how that went down. Mom, honey, you know your brother's situation. He's got the kids, and things are tight since he lost his job. Dad, we think it's best if he moves back here for a while, just until he's back on his feet. Me, okay, I mean, that makes sense. Family helps family, but where's he going to stay? Mom, well, we were thinking the basement suite would be perfect for them. It's got the space, and it's separate from the main house so they can have some privacy. Me, and where am I supposed to go? Dad, we've set up the hobby room for you. It's cozy. Me, you mean the tiny room filled with Mom's sewing and craft stuff? Mom, it's only temporary. Besides, it's our house, and we need to make decisions that benefit the family as a whole. I was stunned. They were asking me to squeeze into a glorified closet so my brother could have my entire suite. It felt so unfair. I didn't argue much after that. I knew it wouldn't change their minds. Instead, I packed up my essentials, clothes and laptop, and figured out a new plan. I booked an all-inclusive resort for my week off, cheaper than paying rent and groceries at home. When I told my parents, they seemed fine at first. Then came the demands for rent and groceries money, as if I hadn't moved out. That led to another heated conversation. Mom, where's the money for rent and groceries? We're counting on that to help support your brother. Me, I moved out. Why would I pay for a place I don't live in anymore? Dad, you can't just leave your family hanging. We're in a bind here. Me, but you gave my living space away. You can't expect me to pay for that. Then my brother chimed in over the phone. Brother, you're being selfish. I have a family to support. We need that space more than you do. Me, and when you were working, did you send money to Mom and Dad? No, you needed your money. Now I need mine. He tried to bargain, offering to move upstairs if I came back, but by then, I'd crunched the numbers. Staying at an all-inclusive during my off weeks was not only cheaper, but also stress-free compared to living with the constant demands at home. Despite everything, I sent my parents $500 for groceries out of guilt and a sense of duty. But that didn't stop the barrage of criticism from them and other relatives, calling me an idiot for abandoning the family in a time of need. It's been hard, but moving out has given me perspective on how much I've been enabling their dependency on me. The accusations of being selfish, especially when I've been anything but, really made it clear that my brother and my parents have been taking advantage of my willingness to help. So am I the idiot for moving out after being basically evicted from my space? I don't think so. I think it's about time I put my own needs and financial stability first. After all, if I'm not living there and not eating there, why should I continue to pay as if I am? Now for the top comments before the update. Not the idiot. Your parents made you pay $1,800 for a room in Edmonton, and you were only there for 2 weeks. Your family is taking advantage of you. You also gave them $500. So don't feel bad for leaving. And don't look back. Lord, tell me you're the scapegoat without telling me you're the scapegoat. There was no communication, no family meeting, no decision together. They decided unilaterally to evict you from the space you were living in to support your brother without any conversation and expected you to take it. I think there is nothing wrong with helping your parents. So I wouldn't necessarily say your old rent was a problem, but it's crazy that they would kick you out and expect the rent and grocery money to remain unchanged. Honestly, it's healthier for you to be on your own anyway. $1,800 for 2 weeks is overcharging for a basement suite. Opie's parents overcharged her rent. Then they kicked her to a small room to accommodate their son and expected her to grin and bear it. I'm pretty sure they've never heard the term, "don't bite the hand that feeds you." In this case, they marked the hand that fed them. Yep, exactly. That's what the family wanted. Free as $1,800 and the ability to boss and serve OP wherever they want it. Don't forget about the babysitting. Her parents raised her and her brother. Sister-in-law is exhausted and needs help on demand. OP, you didn't agree to subsidize your entire family on your salary while you stayed in a tiny hobby room and babysitting siblings' food too. That's just extra ridiculous. Good for you. I'm moving out and getting way better. All-inclusive, warmer accommodation, with a few margaritas thrown in. Update 1. After my somewhat dramatic exit from the family home, where I traded my basement suite for the unpredictability of various resorts during my off weeks from work, I was ready to embrace a little peace. However, peace seems to be a luxury that's not on the menu for me right now. It all started with a phone call from my dad. I was half expecting it to be an olive branch, maybe a little acknowledgement that they'd pushed too hard, or an admission that they missed having me around. But nope, it wasn't anything close to that. Instead, it was more like a summons back to the family fold, but this time with added financial responsibilities. Dad was on the other end, sounding more stressed than usual. "Dad, listen, we need to discuss your brother's situation further. It's worse than we thought." Me: "Dad, I'm already sending money for groceries. I'm helping from a distance as best I can." Dad: "That's not going to cut it anymore. He's in a real bind, and now there are school fees for the kids that need covering." That caught me off guard. I mean, school fees? Since when did my responsibility extend to covering my nephew's education expenses? Me: "Why am I expected to contribute to that? Shouldn't that be on him and what he can manage?" Dad: "It's about supporting family. That's how it should be." Before I could argue further, he threw in another guilt-inducing comment, suggesting that if I didn't step up, the kids might have to leave their school due to financial constraints. It felt like emotional blackmail, but that wasn't all. My mom got on the line too, and she had news of her own. Apparently, she'd been talking to various relatives, stirring up a storm of concern about my so-called abandonment of family duties. Now there was a family meeting on the horizon, a virtual one, where I was expected to be grilled over my financial contributions, or lack thereof. "Mom, we're all meeting to talk about this. You need to be there. It's important." Like I needed another meeting in my life where I would be painted as the villain for choosing financial independence over endless support. The call ended with them making it clear they were unhappy with my decisions, and I was left fuming yet conflicted. Do I continue to pull away and focus on my own financial health, or do I give in to their demands to keep the peace? In the midst of all this, my brother, who hadn't directly spoken to me since he moved into my old space, decided it was a good time to reach out, not to mend fences, but to join in on the pressure. "Brother, think about the kids. You don't want to be the one they blame for having to switch schools. Don't be selfish." His words hit a nerve, not because they made me feel guilty, but because of the sheer audacity. This was the same guy who'd managed his finances so poorly that he was now relying on our parents, and by extension me, to bail him out. His hypocrisy was glaring. I didn't reply to his message. Instead, I spent the next few days mulling over everything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how unfair the entire situation was. I was being asked to sacrifice my financial well-being to support not only my parents, but now an extended family network that seemed to have endless expectations. The family meeting loomed large, and when the day came, I logged in with a heavy heart but a clear head. The array of faces on my screen was like a panel of judges, ready to decree my fate. The conversation went as expected. "Aunt, we're all worried about you distancing yourself from your responsibilities." "Uncle, family should come first above all. You need to think about what's more important here." The accusations and guilt trips were thrown around liberally, and I found myself defending my choices more vigorously than I ever had. I laid out my financial plans, the need to secure my future, and the unfairness of being the sole financial buffer for everyone else's shortcomings. It was draining, emotionally and mentally, to have to justify my life choices to a group of people who seemed only interested in what I could give, not in my well-being. By the end of the meeting, I was exhausted, but something in me had shifted. The clarity that came from speaking my truth was liberating. I realized that while family is important, the toxicity of this dynamic was not something I had to accept passively. I decided then and there to set boundaries. I communicated clearly that while I would always love them, I could no longer be their financial crutch. I would help when I could, but not at the expense of my own financial security. The backlash was immediate. More calls, more messages, more guilt. But I held firm. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. So here I am, sharing this with you all. Not just as a vent, but as a reminder. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the toughest thing you can do, especially when it comes to family. But it's also the most crucial for your own sanity and stability. Thanks for listening. Any advice or thoughts are more than welcome. How do you handle family expectations without losing yourself in the process? Because right now, that's the balance I'm trying to strike. Update 2. Hey everyone, back again with another hefty dose of my ongoing family drama. Seriously, just when I thought I'd established some ground rules that might actually stick, the situation managed to escalate even further. It's like setting boundaries was the cue for everyone to double down on their efforts to pull me back in. It's exhausting, to say the least. So, after that super intense family meeting where I stood my ground about not being an ATM for everyone's financial crises, I really hoped things might cool off a bit. But boy was I wrong. If anything, it seems my attempts to establish some limits only stirred the pot even more. A few days after the meeting, I got an email. Not from my parents or my brother, but from an aunt who's always fancied herself as the family's moral compass. The email was a doozy, longer than your average rant, packed with accusations and guilt-tripping. Email from Aunt. We need to address a serious issue concerning your recent decisions. It has become apparent that you are withdrawing from your family responsibilities. This behavior is not only disappointing, but deeply troubling to all of us who care about the family's well-being. Your parents have done so much for you, and now when they need your support, you are choosing to prioritize your financial independence over their needs and those of your brother's family. This is a crucial time for your brother, and he needs all the support we can give him. We expect you to reconsider your stance and start contributing more significantly to his mortgage and the children's extracurricular activities. Remember, family is everything. We must support each other, especially during hard times. Reading that email felt like I was being lectured by someone who had no idea, or didn't care, about the pressures I was already under. The level of entitlement was staggering. But that wasn't the end of it. Just when I thought it couldn't get more invasive, my mom decided to take things up a notch by calling my employer. Yes, you read that correctly. She actually called my place of work. Fortunately, she didn't get through to my boss directly, but the message she left with his secretary was enough to raise a lot of eyebrows. Mom's message to my boss. Hello, this is Mom's name. My name's Mother. I'm calling to discuss some urgent family matters that might affect her performance at work. We're going through a tough time, and it's crucial she supports us more. It would be helpful if you could encourage her to take her responsibilities seriously. Thank you. When I heard about this, I was beyond mortified. The idea that she would drag my professional life into this mess was something I hadn't even considered as a possibility. Driven by frustration and more than a little anger, I called her to confront her about the inappropriate call. Me. Mom, why would you call my work? That's completely inappropriate and out of line. Mom, I'm just trying to do what's best for our family. You're not listening, and maybe you'll listen to them. Me. My work has nothing to do with our family issues. You need to respect my professional boundaries. Mom. We're your family. We come first, and you need to prioritize us over everything else. The call ended with no resolution, just more tension and frustration. It seemed like every attempt I made to establish some reasonable boundaries was met with more extreme tactics from their side. And as if that wasn't enough, my brother has now begun a campaign of his own. He's been sending me texts and emails not directly asking for money, but sharing links to expensive items for his kids, like it's some sort of hint. Brother's text. Hey, check this out. Would be great for the kids' summer camp. They'd love it. Link to a pricey summer camp. Saw this and thought of nephew's name? He's been wanting this for ages. Link to a high-end gadget. It's like a constant drip feed of guilt and manipulation, trying to wear me down. In the midst of this, another relative decided to throw their hat in the ring. My cousin, whom I haven't spoken to in months, called me up, trying to play mediator, or so it seemed at first. Cousin. Hey, I know things are tough right now, but you know how your mom and dad are. Maybe you could just help a little more, just until your brother finds his feet? It was yet another plea masked as a friendly suggestion, yet another attempt to make me bend after I'd already stated my limits. The pressure is mounting, and it's getting harder to see a way out that doesn't end in either caving to their demands or severing ties more dramatically. So, here I am, stuck between a rock and a hard place. My family keeps pushing, and I keep backing up until I feel like I'm about to fall off a cliff. It's a delicate balance, trying to maintain my financial independence and sanity while being bombarded by their ever-increasing demands. Thanks for listening to my vent. Any advice on how to handle this new level of intrusion would be greatly appreciated. How do you deal with family that refuses to accept boundaries? Because I'm all out of ideas here. Update 3. After my last update, I had a sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, I had managed to communicate my stance clearly enough that my family would take a step back and respect my boundaries. Unfortunately, that hope was short-lived, and the reality has been anything but accommodating. Let's start with the latest developments. My parents have taken their expectations to a whole new level. It's no longer just about emotional appeals or subtle guilt trips. Now it's full-on demands and a laundry list of financial expectations that they seem to pull out of thin air. Recently, I received an email from my mom that felt more like a corporate invoice than a message from a family member. She meticulously outlined a monthly amount they expect me to contribute, which goes way beyond the basics of groceries or occasional help. Email from Mom. After much consideration, we've come to the conclusion that a contribution of $2,000 a month from you is reasonable to cover your share of the family expenses. This includes your brother's mortgage, the kids' schooling, medical bills for your father's recent health issues, and urgent renovations like the roof repair before winter. Additionally, we have calculated back payments we believe you owe for the times you were under-contributing. The level of entitlement in that email was staggering. Not only am I expected to shoulder these arbitrary costs, but there's also a casual mention of back payments they've concocted based on their own assessment of what I owe them. And as if the financial demands weren't enough, my dad has started a sort of smear campaign among the wider family. He's been calling up relatives, painting me as the family black sheep who has shirked his familial duties. This has resulted in a barrage of calls and messages from cousins, uncles, and aunts I haven't heard from in ages, each echoing the same sentiments about family duty and loyalty. One of my uncles even left a voicemail that could have been scripted for maximum guilt induction. Uncle's voicemail. "Hey, it's Uncle Name. Just got off the phone with your dad, and it's really a shame to hear what's going on. Family should stick together, especially in tough times. We didn't raise you to turn your back on family. Think about what you're doing." Meanwhile, my brother has found a new platform for his side of the story, social media. He's been posting about his financial struggles in a way that's designed to tug at the heartstrings of anyone who doesn't know the full story. Each post is a thinly veiled jab at me, portraying him as the martyr struggling to keep his head above water while I supposedly live it up away from family responsibilities. Brother's social media post. In tough times, you find out who your real family is, struggling to keep everything afloat here, and it's tough when not everyone remembers their roots. Some people forget who was there for them when times were hard. Adding to this, there was a recent family gathering that I wisely chose to skip. According to a cousin who stayed more neutral, my absence and decision to set financial boundaries were the main topics of conversation. It seems my actions have stirred up quite the controversy, transforming me into the family pariah in absentia. Cousin's insight. You wouldn't believe the talks at dinner. You're basically the main character in a drama none of us signed up for. I tried to say you were just setting some boundaries, but it's like I was speaking a different language. They're convinced you're just being selfish. With each passing day, the pressure mounts, becoming more relentless. It feels like every attempt I make to pull back is met with an even stronger push to drag me back in. The more I try to establish my independence, the more they seem determined to erode it, wrapping up their financial demands in the guise of family obligation and loyalty. It's a tug of war where the stakes are my financial stability and mental peace. Every conversation feels like a battlefield, every phone call a strategy session on their part to wear me down and guilt me into compliance. So here I am, wondering how much is too much. At what point does one draw the line definitively and say enough is enough? How do you sever ties that are bound by blood but strained by unrelenting demands and manipulation? This update is more than just a vent. It's a call for advice, for shared experiences, for any wisdom on how to navigate this minefield of familial obligation and personal sanity. How do you handle a family that not only refuses to accept boundaries, but actively seeks to cross them at every turn? Thanks for sticking with me through this ongoing saga. Your insights and support mean the world to me as I try to find my footing in this rocky familial landscape. How do you maintain your independence when your family sees it as a betrayal? That's the million-dollar question I'm grappling with right now. Update 4. Hello again, everyone. Here I am, back with another update that feels more like the latest installment in an ongoing drama series, where the storylines just get thicker and the family antics more intense. Each time I think maybe this chapter will close, a new, even more demanding one begins. Strap in, this one's a doozy. Since the last time I shared, the situation hasn't just escalated, it's transformed into an almost daily struggle with a barrage of tactics that seem pulled straight from a playbook designed to break my resolve. Let's start with the latest strategy: unannounced visits. My parents have now taken to showing up at my doorstep without warning. The first time it happened, I was genuinely taken aback. There I was, thinking maybe they'd come to their senses and we could have a calm discussion, perhaps mend some fences. But no, they had other plans. They came armed, not just with physical folders of bills and documents, but with a prepared list of demands and accusations, all designed to guilt me into opening my wallet and abandoning my hard-earned boundaries. Dad's words: "Look at all these expenses, your brother's struggling, us struggling, and here you are, living like none of that matters. We raised you better than this. It's time for you to stop thinking only about yourself and start contributing like you owe it to this family." The audacity of that confrontation left me more than just a little shaken. It was a wake-up call to how far they were willing to go. I managed to stay calm, but firmly told them they needed to leave if all they wanted to talk about was money. But that wasn't the end of it. My parents, not ones to give up easily, began a new campaign, this time involving my friends and acquaintances. They started reaching out under the pretense of being concerned about me, subtly implying to anyone they could reach that my recent distancing from family duties was due to some kind of personal crisis or breakdown. One of my close friends shared their encounter with me. Friend's account: "Hey, just so you know, I got a call from your mom. She was talking about how you've been avoiding family responsibilities and hinted that maybe you were struggling with something deeper. She asked if I'd noticed any worrying changes in you." This maneuver was not just manipulative, it was invasive and embarrassing. To think that my own family would go so far as to paint me as unstable just to rope me back into the fold was something I hadn't anticipated. And then there's my brother, who until recently had been somewhat quieter compared to my parents. He changed tactics, opting for a more direct and aggressive approach. He began sending me messages that were harsher and more guilt-inducing than before, blaming me outright for the hardships he was facing. Brother's latest message: "Everyone's struggling and you're out there living it up. How do you think that makes us feel? The kids keep asking about you. They don't understand why their aunt has just cut them off. You're ruining everything with your selfishness." Each message from him was like a strike, designed to hit emotional nerves and guilt me into submission. It's clear now that they're all in on this together, each playing their part in a coordinated effort to wear me down. So, here I am, caught in an almost daily battle to maintain some semblance of independence and sanity. The pressure is relentless. Every unreturned call feels like a victory, and every answered one a setback. My personal life, my professional life, it's all starting to feel like it's under siege. Amidst this chaos, I've had to start setting even firmer boundaries, not just with my family, but within my own life to protect my mental health. I've begun screening calls more rigorously, limiting my availability, and in some cases, having very frank conversations with friends and colleagues to preempt any misinformation coming from my family. This constant defense mode is exhausting. It's like being on high alert all the time, and it's not how I want to live. But the alternative, giving in to their demands, would cost me not just financially, but emotionally and ethically. I'm sharing this update not just as a vent, but as a plea for advice and solidarity. For those of you who've navigated similar treacherous family dynamics, how did you manage? How do you maintain boundaries without severing ties completely? Or is cutting ties the only way to regain peace? Thanks for sticking with me through this saga. Your insights, advice, and shared experiences are invaluable as I navigate this incredibly tricky path. How do you keep standing your ground when every day feels like a new battle? Because right now, that's the challenge I'm facing. Last update. Hello everyone, it's me again. This might be my last update for quite some time, if not the final one. As many of you know, the relentless family drama I've been chronicling here has reached a pivotal moment. A moment where tough decisions had to be made for the sake of my sanity and well-being. After much thought, and an overwhelming tide of events, I've made the difficult choice to cut ties with my family and move to another state for a fresh start. Here's how things unfolded, and what it's been like navigating this massive change. Since my last post, the pressure from my family didn't just continue, it intensified beyond anything I had previously experienced. It became clear that no amount of rational discussion, boundary setting, or pleas for understanding would change their behavior. Their demands grew increasingly outrageous, and their tactics more desperate. First, the financial demands turned into outright accusations of neglect and abandonment. My parents, once content with passive-aggressive requests for money, began a concerted effort to paint me as the villain in a narrative they broadcasted not just to close family, but to anyone within our community who would listen. Parents' words: We just don't understand why she's acting this way. After everything we've done for her, she's now turning his back on us when we need her the most. It's heartbreaking to see him change like this, to refuse to help his own family. The emotional toll of being portrayed as the family outcast was immense. I began receiving messages and calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, each echoing the sentiments my parents had shared. The weight of their words was intended to bring me back into line, to make me cave under the pressure and return to my old role as the family provider. And then there was my brother, who took to social media and family gatherings to share tales of how I had abandoned them, how I had let down my nieces and nephews who couldn't understand why their aunt would suddenly disappear from their lives. Brother's narrative. Can you believe it? He just left us all struggling here while he lives it up out of state. The kids keep asking for him, and I don't know what to tell them anymore. His words, whether shared in person or posted online, added another layer of complexity, making it not just a private family issue, but a public spectacle. Amidst this storm, my parents began showing up at my workplace, pleading with my colleagues and causing scenes that not only embarrassed me, but also jeopardized my professional reputation. Each visit was more dramatic than the last, filled with tears and tales of woe intended to paint me as the heartless daughter who'd gone astray. Please, you have to understand, we wouldn't do this if it weren't absolutely necessary. We just want our daughter back, the way he used to be, helping his family. Facing this level of public and private pressure, I realized that the boundaries I was trying to set were not just being ignored. They were being actively challenged in every way possible. It became painfully clear that the only way to preserve my mental health and regain control over my life was to make a radical change. So I decided to move. I packed up my life, accepted a job offer in another state, and left behind the world I knew. This decision wasn't made lightly. It came with a heavy heart and a lot of soul-searching. I knew that moving away and cutting ties would alter my relationship with my family forever. The move itself was both liberating and incredibly challenging. Starting over in a new place meant not just setting up a new home, but also building a new support network from scratch. It meant learning to live without the constant family drama, but also dealing with the guilt and emotional fallout that came with such a definitive separation. Since relocating, my days have been a mix of relief and reflection. There's a peace that comes with no longer being on high alert for the next family crisis, but there's also a sadness in knowing that my ties to my family are severed, perhaps irreparably. Every day brings new challenges and opportunities. I'm exploring my new city, meeting new people, and discovering parts of myself that were buried under years of familial obligations and guilt. I'm learning that while I can cherish the good memories of my family, I can also acknowledge and move away from the toxic patterns that dominated our interactions. This decision to move and cut ties hasn't solved all my problems, but it has given me a space to breathe, to plan for a future that I dictate based on my needs and aspirations, not my family's demands. It's a chance to redefine what family means to me and how I engage with those I love. I wanted to share this final update as a thank you to everyone who's followed along, offered advice, and shared their own stories. Your support has been a beacon during some of my darkest days. For anyone else going through similar struggles, know that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to the greatest growth. Take care of yourselves, and remember, it's okay to choose your own well-being over familial obligations that seek to diminish you. Here's to new beginnings, to healing, and to finding peace wherever you may be. Thank you, and perhaps someday I'll return with new stories and insights from this journey of self-discovery.